this is a subject that's really creating a lot of discussion, a lot of enthusiasm, sometimes fear, but at least creating a lot of emotions.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Kongsberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners. Welcome to the 107th episode of the Shipping Podcast. On December the 5th last year, I was invited to meet Pia Meling, the Vice President Sales and Marketing at Massterly at their offices in Oslo. Massterly is the world's first autonomous shipping company, so I jumped at the opportunity to discuss this hot topic with someone so knowledgeable in this new area of shipping. It's interesting to hear what Pia has to say, and that Massterly's vision is to reduce costs at all levels and be applicable to all companies that have a transport need. So it's focusing on moving goods from roads to sea. Let's listen to Pia and you will understand. This is Pia Meling for you. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thanks for coming and seeing me. My name is Pia Meling. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for a new company called Massterly. It's a joint venture with Wilhelmsen and Kongsberg that was operational on September 1st this year.
Congratulations then.
Yeah.
What is your background?
I have quite a broad commercial shipping background. I started actually as a consultant, and then I was hired by Klaveness, one of the biggest shipping operators companies in Norway. And I spent 11 years there also doing chartering of vessels, running IT projects, working with sales and marketing for the Klaveness pools. And then I moved on to a few other equipment suppliers in the maritime industry before joining Wilhelmsen a couple of years ago.
So how did you first come in contact with shipping?
I was a consultant for Accenture doing strategy work, and I was then on a project for Klaveness, helping them. I think it was a balance scorecard development, something like that. And then they offered me a job.
So did you study business finance or?
Yes, I have an MBA from Bergen, from the Norwegian School of Economics. So I came in kind of as a number cruncher, and I started in the finance department in Klaveness, working in large Excel sheets before I found out that I prefer to work more in the operational units and closer to people and customers.
Okay. So you have been around for a while then.
Yeah.
So what are the biggest changes that you have seen in shipping?
Well, first of all, there's more women.
Yes, there is.
Maybe Wilhelmsen is overrepresented with women, I'm not sure, but I have always worked mainly with men. And I can really see there is more women now in the industry and also on management or mid-management level at least. That's a trend. I think shipping is becoming more attractive, more known to young people and to the people in general. I used to talk to friends about what I did and they didn't care and they didn't understand anything about it. And now it seems to be a more interesting area for young people and people in general to get involved in shipping.
What do you think that is?
I think we've opened up more. I think we are also more environmentally friendly and showing that we're taking measures to improve. And I think also, of course, the innovations that are happening in shipping now is also getting a lot of attention. There's so much to innovate on. It's still a very old-fashioned way of doing business in shipping. So I believe those factors have increased the attractivity of the industry.
It makes me so happy. I think you are the first guest saying that you see the changes. You see the changes and you see that things are happening.
Yeah, I feel that. And I feel proud of working in shipping. And I've always enjoyed it a lot. But I used to feel like and nobody else understood it in the beginning. And it was a very closed community. Probably still is to a certain extent, but I feel like we have opened up a bit more, reached out a bit more, and becoming more visible.
So I could just stop questioning things now, because those you have already covered all my questions.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah. But of course, it's of course driven by the fact of where I am right now in this new company, which is so exciting, and we do get a lot of attention, and everybody has an opinion about the subject that we're working on, autonomous shipping, and that's also probably why when I was doing dry cargo chartering, it was not that interesting for the general public to have an opinion about moving a grain cargo from one port to the other. But this is a subject that's really creating a lot of discussion, a lot of enthusiasm, sometimes fear, but at least creating a lot of emotions. So
yes, it does. So talk a little bit about Massterly. What is that?
It's a fantastic cooperation between the world's largest technology provider within the field of automation and autonomy, Kongsberg, and Wilhelmsen, with our long experience on operating vessels and having logistics operations. And what we want to do is to move transport from road to sea. That is the overall purpose. Because our roads are congested, it's an issue with, around the big cities with a lot of emissions. Everybody understands that this cannot grow further, and we need to find new ways of moving goods. So by introducing autonomy, we can take down the cost of shipping by sea, and we can actually compete with trucks. That is the game changer here. And if you think about all, especially, of course, in Norway, where we have really poor roads and fantastic seaways, the opportunity to move this from running through tunnels and up and down mountains to actually just cross a fjord, the zero-emission vessel at low cost, that's really attractive. It can actually change the way we move goods and eventually people. But goods is the most imminent one to look at, where you don't have passengers on board.
So now I have to be the devil's advocate here.
Sure.
How does it work?
It has been tested, actually. The components of the technology needed in an autonomous vessel has been tested for years. When Kongsberg first introduced the dynamic positioning technology, that's 40 years ago. And they're also using camera systems that are used in the airline industry today and in the defense industry. So it has been tested in many other arenas. What's new is putting all those technologies together and creating kind of a fusion of sensors and cameras and an autonomy brain on the vessel, and creating a new situational awareness, replacing the human situational awareness. But this is actually, the components have been tested in many applications. So putting it all together is the job now. And it's already tested also. And it's not a big question about whether the technology will work. The question is, what's the regulation going to look like for these vessels? That's a big job.
And it must have to do with that connectivity is cheaper and more available now?
It is, and it will be even more. There's tons of new innovations also on that area. Also, not only the normal satellite communication. Of course, the first projects we are looking at now are quite short sea projects, where you even have a mobile coverage for the duration of the voyage. So the connectivity is not a huge issue if you look at short sea shipping. Of course, if you're starting to look at deep sea shipping and optimizing the sea voyage there could be a question on cost of connectivity and potential time lags and so on. But the biggest hurdle right now is not the technology, it's the regulation and the timeline for having a new regulation for these kind of vessels.
So who has got that ball? Is it the IMO or is it the classification?
IMO has the ball, and they have started a scoping exercise. But we all know it can take a little bit of time in IMO. So right now we are, of course, very focused on Norway having the first commercial 100% autonomous vessel being built, the Yara Birkeland. And that's pushing the Norwegian authorities to make some decisions. So we are working both in Kongsberg and Wilhelmsen very closely with Norwegian maritime authorities and the class societies, and actually also some of the education communities. So the University of Southeastern Norway, they're also part of a project where we're looking at what are the implications if autonomous shipping is arriving in a few years. What are the implications for legislation and for staffing of the shore control center and so on?
So every Norwegian talks about Yara, and then I think maybe not everyone knows what that is all about. Could you please just give a short description?
Sure, I will. Yara is a fertilizer producer, a global fertilizer producer that I guess until now was not that known to the general public either. So they're huge in producing a fertilizer and working also on innovation. Many innovations that are not known around farming and how to optimize the crop globally. But they are also a forerunner in this autonomy project because they are using also trucks today in their logistics chain and some vessels, some conventional vessels that they own or charter. But it's the first commercial container vessel being built ever is being built and owned by Yara. And it will transport their fertilizer from their production site in Herøya to Larvik and Brevik, two other small towns in Norway.
So what I understand, they own the cargo.
They own the cargo,
container, and the ship.
Yes.
And it's not that far that they are actually transporting this?
No, it's quite short distances, but it's changing their whole logistics to a fully automated solution. And they're investing heavily also in the production site, Herøya, where they have a factory and they have a port, and they are making this smart port and automating the loading and discharging also.
Yeah, because I understand it's easier if you own all parts of it to start.
Of course it is.
And that's why it's so great.
That's why it's great. That's why this is a small scope for this project, you might say. It's one customer, one cargo. They might also add on cargo from other partners on the vessel. But what makes it feasible is the fact that they are sitting on the whole value chain. They own the cargo, they will own the vessel, they are owning the port. So it makes it easy, or not easy, it makes it easier to succeed. But this is an important showcase for Norway.
Yeah, and for the world, I think.
And for the world, and when we have this, when this is actually shown to be functioning very well and reducing the number of truckloads needed and reducing the environmental impact and increasing safety, this can be adopted in a much larger scale in other areas.
So actually on my way here yesterday, I met an old friend of mine on the bus. And we were talking about autonomous ships. And he said, no, I don't believe in it. I think there is not enough broadband to actually have a vessel on the open sea. And I felt like, I will ask you.
Good. There will be enough capacity when we are ready to put this on the open sea. But remember, we are now in end of 2018. Yara Birkeland will be delivered in 2020. It will be manned for a period of 1 to 2 years. So we are looking at 21, 22 before it will enter into a fully unmanned operation. Other vessels, other projects that we're looking at are probably delivered later. So there are still a few years ahead, and these are still short sea shipping, very close to shore. So I don't see this as a big issue. And I know there's a lot of new projects coming on new ways of getting connectivity. Even somebody are talking about having something mounted on airplanes so that when all the airplanes are crossing the sea, they are producing a network. There's going to be a revolution in connectivity because the market is demanding it. And it's everybody wants data from the vessel and to the vessel. So I believe this will be solved in time. for autonomy to reach the open seas, which is a few years away.
But I understand you visited the vessel the other day that was autonomous?
No, that was not Yara, but it was my boss, Tom, from Kongsberg. He was invited to Rolls-Royce in Finland because they did a demo on board a vessel that is autonomous. And they had around 80 guests, some press, some ship owners, some partners. Kongsberg are buying Rolls-Royce if everything is approved by competition authorities, which we hope it will be by Q1 next year. So it's interesting to see that their technology is also adding on to Kongsberg's technology. And they had a very successful voyage. I think the weather also was quite poor. It was foggy and quite challenging circumstances. And the vessel did navigate by itself, avoiding obstacles and returning along the route that it was programmed to go. So it was definitely a good showcase for the technology working also under quite challenging circumstances.
And also with people who are not that used to being on board a ship?
Yes, probably. So, and we have quite a few of those research vessels that are equipped with autonomy brains and are performing autonomous operations that people can see. So the new thing with Yara is putting it into a commercial operation, basically, because taking the research to reality is what's new. And that's why this got so much attention. I think it's a media reach of 2 billion people on those news about Yara Birkeland being built.
It's amazing. Yeah, but it is revolutionizing. I mean, I live in Gothenburg and Volvo is there.
Yes.
So autonomous cars is something that we are sort of at the top of our mind.
Yes.
And they are testing them and so on. I mean, 5 years ago, did anyone talk about autonomous cars then? No. But they were probably being in the brains of the people working at the car manufacturer.
And if you think ahead, 20 years, 30 years from now, people will think, I can't believe that my mother or my grandmother was allowed to drive by herself.
Yeah.
Because there's so much human error involved in traffic, of course, in road traffic, but also at sea. 75% of accidents at sea are due to human error. Fatigue, lack of attention, communication errors.
But that brings us to the crew. Because unmanned ships is not the same as autonomous ships.
Very important distinction. So autonomous means that some or all operations are automated, and that it can start from a vessel being fully manned, but just getting assistance on some of the, for example, the docking of the vessel. You can have an auto-docking function that will optimize the way the vessel is docking into a quay every time. And that's something that, for example, Bastø Fosen has started using. So they have not reduced any crew. They're just getting better decision support. And, when the vessel is performing a very, very repetitive action again and again, the machine can actually do it better than the different captains that are rotating on these vessels. And the captain can get time to look at the other aspects of the surroundings, or talk to the passengers, or just get help. So this is one part of autonomy. That's the lower end, you might say, in a scale of moving from that just assistance to remote control with crew on board, without crew on board, or eventually fully autonomous vessels where the vessel is making its own decisions. It has a brain that's making the decisions. And it should have been tested and programmed to know how to act in every scenario. And the vessel is also then programmed to go into what is called a safe state if there are too many obstacles or dangers surrounding the vessel that it cannot proceed on the planned voyage. So, and this is of course very important to prove to the authorities that we have a number of safe states that the vessel will be able to go into, either dropping anchor or going into the shore somewhere where it cannot be of any danger.
So are you using the same kind of I know that in the car manufacturing, they are talking about 5 stages for the when it's a little bit autonomous.
Yes, there's different definitions. We are using the IMO definition, which has these 4 stages of. First stage is just some operations are automated, but the vessel is still with crew. Second one is that the vessel is remote controlled. Parts of the operations are remote controlled, but the crew is still there. Third one is remote controlled without crew, and the fourth one is the fully autonomous. And Massterly will be working with all of these different types of autonomy. The current market for fully autonomous vessels is quite small. So we are focusing also on how can we take Kongsberg technology, apply it to all the vessels that Wilhelmsen somehow are involved with, and optimize the decisions on board, optimize the data, do condition monitoring, maybe move into a more predictive maintenance state where you can actually foresee that some equipment is going to break down before it breaks down. So this is the wider area of this corporation that we are also focusing on, where I believe there's a huge market to optimize the way vessels are being run today.
So my friend from the bus, he works for an insurance company, so maybe he should pay more attention to the question.
And insurance is quite interesting when you mention it, because if you get all this data, imagine a vessel that has sensors on all the equipment, and you can actually read data on vibration, just see what kind of state all the equipment is in. Then the insurance premium probably could be lower because they know exactly what they're insuring. Today, they don't know that in the same way.
Yeah, and it could be avoided. Claims could be avoided because they could sort of do something before it breaks down.
Yes. So this is the really fascinating thing, is about how this can change so many aspects of our business, and thinking about how everything has been designed also out of maximizing the salary per hour, because you need people on board in all machines, not only ships. You know, you have huge garbage trucks, you have huge trucks, because everything is about optimizing the really expensive part, which is the salary of the person driving the truck or the crew. If you actually think that that's not a design criteria anymore, you can think differently. Maybe you can replace the big units with many smaller units. There's this kind of swarm technology that people are talking about, that maybe you can go to smaller ports with smaller vessels and have more of a feeder structure in your logistics, instead of having all the big vessels lined up, waiting to get into Rotterdam and Singapore in very long line and polluting heavily while they do it. So I think we're just seeing the start of how this can change the whole logistics chain globally. That's why it makes it so exciting to work with.
I totally agree with you. I have been invited to the Högskolan på Västlandet, who is doing the research on the human side of autonomous ships here in Trondheim in Norway. And we were talking about what will this do to the actual role of the people on board or on shore? How will that change? And that is also an interesting thing to discuss, I think.
It's very interesting.
And I think we should be on top of that, because we should decide what we want it to look like.
Mm-hmm. And again, we have to think differently, to start with the future instead of starting with the now. But of course, right now, we have the people, we have the education we have, and those people will be used on shore. So when we're building this shore control center next year, here in Wilhelmsen office in Norway, and we will man this with captains and navigators with a lot of seagoing experience. And in addition, those people might have to have some training on cybersecurity, data handling, so on. But if you look into the far future, maybe you need different skills. And I think all the maritime education communities are looking at this now as well. How will this affect their curriculum? What has to be in this curriculum 20 years from now? But the basics of navigating a vessel and understanding the rules and regulations in shipping, and understanding, how to judge your current situation at sea, that doesn't really change. Even though you're sitting in an office and you're assisted with screens and sound and a visual overview that is better than what you have on board the vessel, your way of interacting doesn't really change in the short term. Of course, if you think far into the future, you might not need to interact with a human on shore. If this is tested, it's shown to be very, very safe, and it's better not to have human in the loop at all. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. That's not a very relevant scenario to be looking at right now.
No, and everyone keeps talking about that all ships usually carry a service team for the engine room anyhow.
Yes. The new thing now with these vessels that are being built to be autonomous in the future is, of course, that they're also built to be minimum maintenance required. So you are not using a diesel engine, you're using batteries. And there's not much to do down there in the battery room during the sea voyage. And you're designing the vessel to be maintenance free as possible and maintained in port. This is also different because you always design the vessel knowing that you have the crew. 24/7 you have the crew on board. So they can perform all sorts of maintenance tasks. Now, if you think about not having crew on board, you are forced to think differently on how you build the vessel, how you design the vessel. And the vessel is also built to be as energy efficient as possible and charging as quick as possible. And it can go at a much lower speed because if you don't have crew, they don't need to get home. They don't need to do the crew change. You don't have a time window that you need to reach for the sake of the people on board. So you can plan better. You can go at a slower speed, reducing your footprint and spending less money on energy. So for me, at least, the idea of thinking from a different angle, a different design criteria, that's really interesting.
Yeah, there's so many interesting angles on this one. I'm totally excited now. But I think, for people that are actually sailing now, or maybe they've gone ashore, to them it might seem or sound like a futuristic picture that they can't really picture themselves in. And I can understand that. On the other hand, what they know and their skills and everything they know, of course, would be very valuable to you right now when you're building your future for ships. And is it a generational question as well?
Perhaps. Of course, younger people tend to be more enthusiastic about technology in general being an enabler for them and not a threat. But I think we are all coming to grips with that now. All over, also in shipping, that technology will change the way we work, and there's nothing to gain in resisting the opportunities that technology can give us. If you embrace it, then you can have a lot more fun. But of course, it's coupling the technology with the knowledge that people have, which makes it really attractive. So, an experienced captain, that to have him or her equipped with the right tools, the right data to make the optimal decisions, that's much better than having an experienced captain equipped with poor visuals and poor data to make decisions. So I believe that the beauty is mixing the maritime knowledge and the experience of people with technology and getting a better result. If you're automating a process, also you cannot just look at a description of the process, how it should be. You need to mimic what people are actually doing. People are sometimes not following the process, but they do it for a reason. They do it to optimize the voyage. And you have to find out what are those situations where the person actually makes a different decision than the process says, and why is that? And how can we also make sure that the technology doesn't miss, the good judgment that people have? So the machine has to learn from the people for many, many years. So I see that it could be interesting also for an experienced captain to be part of this journey and to be helping the autonomy brain learn. And also, you could work in normal office hours. You could work in your home country. You could get to see your children grow up. There's actually an opportunity to have a better job while using your maritime experience and education, if you can work from shore. So we are creating new jobs, actually. And we are not competing with existing vessels, we're competing with trucks. So we are creating a new maritime competition area, because if the cost of shipping goes down, if you can reduce or remove the crew cost, and also you can reduce or remove the cost of manned port operations, then we're looking at coming into an area where we can actually be competitive with trucks, also on shorter distances. And that means that we can create new maritime jobs.
Yeah, and I think we need new skills into our industry, or people with other skills that we traditionally have recruited or got on board, so to say. And then it doesn't really matter which gender that person have.
That's also true. You could be pregnant or even breastfeeding and still working from a shore control center. And it doesn't exclude a whole group of people from that kind of job just because they are of a certain gender or have other limitations.
So if we just do a reality check, it's like 80 to 100,000 vessels out there trading. Not all of them on electricity or short sea or autonomous and so on. So how far away is this?
For the global deep sea fleet, it's quite far away to have anything fully.
20 years?
Perhaps. I think also to have an international regulation that is approved by all countries will take some time. And the connectivity is, of course, more of an issue if you're looking at the deep sea. But we need to start somewhere. And we're starting in the obvious case of shifting transport from road to sea in the short sea shipping. And we're starting with assisting deep sea shipping with decision support. And that's a huge market. That should be for every vessel. It doesn't mean anything if it's electric or anything. It's about getting data, gathering data, having somebody make sense of all that data and turn it into usable advice so that you can reduce your cost and improve efficiency. It was also a visit to CMA CGM that in Singapore that my colleague did, and they have 500 vessels that are being monitored by 5 really experienced captains sitting on shore, getting data from the vessel and giving personal advice to the captains that are maneuvering these vessels, coupling data with their experience and then optimizing the voyage. And they claim to have saved $3 million in a month on fuel. So they had a big dashboard with this number. But there's just an example of how you can use data and insight from experienced people, give better decisions to the ship. So, and this is a potentially huge market that Massterly also is looking into, how we can contribute, as we will be building a shore control center that will be manned with seagoing personnel that has the deep maritime experience. And we will have all the infrastructure needed for this kind of tasks. So then we're also very keen to see how we can help, of course, Wilhelmsen, but any other ship operator or owner with improved decision support and condition monitoring.
I was thinking about the car, the autonomous car again. That's sort of how I can visualize this. I know that, for instance, Volvo, I'm sorry I'm mentioning them all the time, but that's at the top of my mind. They have said that they will take responsibility for any accidents caused by an autonomous car. So where will the responsibility lay when it comes to ships?
It's actually something that we are discussing right now.
Yeah.
The role of the captain or the master, because everything is today around the master being in charge and being liable. And the company that has the license to operate the vessel. So if the master is no longer on board the vessel, he will be in a shore control center. So that master will still have some liability, and the company that is operating the vessel will have a liability.
And the ones providing the technology.
And the ones providing the technology will provide some sort of guarantees, I'm sure, of how it will work. But we have not sorted everything out. And I would not dare to say that there will never be an accident with a fully autonomous vessel. I think that would be foolish.
Mm.
But there will be no accident due to manual error, which we know is a big, big portion of the accidents. And also to start with, the vessels will go at very low speed. We're talking about 5 or 6 knots for these first vessels in a very controlled environment. So the risks of accidents are not that big, or the impact of an accident is not that big. But of course, all of this has to be clarified in the coming years before the first vessel is actually setting sail on autonomous technology.
And then I'm thinking about connectivity when you lose contact.
Yeah.
We do that all the time. But I understand it's a 5G, something that you...
5G is being developed now, so that will probably be more available at the time when these vessels are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
If the vessel loses all connectivity, loses every communication, it should still go into a safe state.
Mm-hmm.
For example, dropping anchor.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be designed to go into a safe state no matter what happens, where it cannot be any threat to the surroundings. And then maybe you need to send a tugboat to get it into shore. That can happen. But at least it should not pose any risk to the environment or to other to the people or property. That is
so what happened a month ago in Norway with this collision thing?
The frigate?
Yeah. That would not have happened with autonomous ships.
I wouldn't dare to say that it could never have happened. But this accident has created a lot of discussion in Norway because nobody can understand how can this happen. A frigate runs into an oil tanker outside Bergen, and I think this frigate is worth 400 million. A lot of money. It's a big salvage operation, so it's been hitting the news daily. Hourly for weeks. But there is no full investigation report yet. There's some indications that the situational awareness was wrong on the people on the bridge on the frigate. They believed that the oil tanker was actually the shore because of it was a work light on board the oil tanker that it was so lighted up that they couldn't distinguish the oil tanker from the shore. And they also believed that they were communicating with another vessel that had another position.
Mm-hmm.
So this is, people making some judgment based on all the data sources they have on board. If you removed the visual understanding, looking at the lights, understanding what this is, and you removed that and replaced it with technology showing you exactly that this is an oil tanker with an IMO number, you know exactly which vessel it is. You know exactly which vessel is communicating with you. And you know that you have to start turning well before they did. I believe this kind of accidents would be avoided, yes.
I don't have to ask you, how do you see the future for shipping? But maybe I should. I mean, what do you think?
Well, there's, of course, reasons to be concerned as well with the trade wars going on. That's not necessarily positive for shipping. And also new competitors that might come that we, for example, Amazon, that we don't consider being in shipping. They might decide to go into shipping and disrupt the whole way of delivering goods. So there are, some clouds in the horizon, but I still see that there's a huge need to get goods shipped from A to B, and shipping is the most environmentally friendly way of doing it instead of road transport or airlines. So if we are actually able to adopt and change and work together also as an industry to improve, I believe we can still have a very prosperous future.
So do you think that disruption will come from outside or inside the industry?
It most likely coming from the outside, I believe. We are trying to disrupt from the inside. We are in Wilhelmsen also hiring a lot of young digital trainees. We're having this innovation lab where we have startup companies coming in, working with problems that we are facing and trying to get outside view on what we're doing. And that is very refreshing. But I think it's only when you have a big threat from somebody that are not in shipping, that decides to go into shipping, that's when you really will wake up and feel like you're your whole cost base and your whole infrastructure base might be irrelevant quickly.
Yeah, we had that discussion in Tromsø. You and I, we attended the Vista International Conference in Tromsø, and someone said, yeah, we need an enemy from outside to actually join forces and walk together forward.
I think that's normally how disruption happens. And then some people die and some survive. And I think for all companies now, it's about deciding to be the one that survives. And that means you have to work on your cost base. That's the only way. And you have to make sure that your organization is flexible and adaptable and ready for change.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So how will the shipping industry become more visible to the general public?
I think projects like the one that we have been talking about makes it very visible. If we have we're doing tangible things, we can show physically that we are doing different than before, that we are innovative, that we are environmentally friendly, and we're forward-looking, then that will change the image of shipping. But also cooperating with other industries, because we tend to think that we are so unique. And there's a lot of unique things about shipping, but still there's a lot of similarities to other industries. And at least I can see from the companies that I've worked with that there's been a change of heart, that you open up more for discussions across industries. You have more of these forums. We have a chief digital officer here, Inge Sandvik, and he is also in this forum with other chief digital officers from all over the world and all the different companies with shipping and outside shipping, trying to find out what will the future look like, how should we cooperate, collaborate. And you see a lot of new collaborations and joint ventures happening between shipping companies and software companies. For example, Maersk is testing blockchain. There's a new wave of cooperation because shipping industry understands that we cannot do this alone. And I think that's new because we used to develop everything inside on our own. And this digital disruption that we're, fearing or seeing around us, this I think this led us to wake up and find partners outside shipping to help us get to this next level.
Yeah, because the tradition is that I know this and I keep it close to my chest and don't tell anyone because then I've got an advantage. I would say that era is over.
It's over.
And also, I mean, every company building their own IT system. Isn't it time for an open source revolution?
It is.
How do we get that going?
Well, right now there's a lot of initiatives going in that direction, but of course it's hard to get a global standard for what will the interface look like for this open source that everybody can connect to. And of course all the players are looking at how can we make money on this, what position should we take?
Rather to think about that than to actually build their own system, which is old once it's sort of launched.
Yeah, at least that's better. And there's so much good standard systems out there now that can be applied also to shipping, even though we have some particular some different ways of doing things, or maybe adjust the processes to a standard way of working.
I met someone who said that it used to be that the shipping companies, or ship owners, they hired other companies to do the development of their systems and their digitalization and so on. But the trend is now to employ these people themselves. So that is also a change.
It is a big change that you're insourcing IT again. You're seeing that this is not something that is far from the core. It's actually part of the core. It's part of how you deal with customers. It's part of how you design new products and services. So I guess there will be a big fight for the good resources on the digital front. I'm probably going to advise my kids to go into something of that kind.
Yeah, but I mean, also you realize that data is the new oil. Sort of, it's your new core value. That is what you need to protect.
Yes.
Instead of just doing nothing, or instead of giving it away or making it available to another company. I mean, There's so many things you need to think about.
And the data is much more valuable if you can put it in context. Your data with other data.
Yeah.
But of course, there's a trust issue here on owning the data, on sharing the data. There's questions around cybersecurity, very timely questions, as we've seen issues, both the famous one with MERS, but also some ports that have been hacked.
Yeah.
So, of course, that has to be very solid. And that's also why we are so happy to work with Kongsberg, who is leading on this field, also for the defense industry. So if it is developed to work for a defense industry, it will also work for shipping.
If it's not a frigate.
If it's not a frigate. That's true.
Oh, sorry, joking. Of course. That's a different level of security.
But I believe there's a frenzy right now on data. A little bit of people are a bit hysteric about we just need to gather as much data as possible. And of course, you can do that, or you can start on the other end. So what decisions do we want to improve? What data do we need to make those decisions better? And then go and find that data. I guess you need to do both. You need to gather data to see trends, and maybe from there you get some new insight, but you also need to find out what you're going to use the data for. So to sit on tons of data is not actually the competitive advantage. It's about turning that data into money.
Yeah.
Savings or improved income somehow.
3 years ago, no one spoke about data in this industry. So everyone needs to think about that. Did you have a role model growing up?
That's a good question. I don't think I've had one role model. I've probably just had many. But of course, I have to mention my mother. She was a hardworking woman. And she started as an air hostess. And then she worked her way up Scandinavian Airlines to a top-level management position. And she was away a lot when I was a child. My father was at home cooking and doing all the housework. But she's also inspired me to work, to enjoy work, and also inspired me that this is possible for a woman if you have a good man at home who can support and help. So
share. You can share the work.
Share the work, definitely, and that you don't need to be the one that is doing everything at home and the one that knows best what your children need. Your husband can be equally good at that if he's given the opportunity. So I think she's been a kind of a role model in terms of work.
Who do you think I should interview the next? Who would you be interested in listening to in the shipping podcast?
I'm not sure. You probably already did interview quite a lot of those that are interesting. But maybe if you could interview a young woman who just started in shipping, who comes from another industry and somehow has a fresh view on shipping altogether, that could be interesting. Who has a totally different background, but still has been finding shipping interesting enough to start working here. So actually maybe one of the digital trainees, one of those people who are actually found out that this is what they want to go for, the maritime industry, and why.
I hope there are many to choose from.
I think there are quite a few to choose from in the big companies now, at least in Europe. Also, I guess in Singapore and big hubs like that, you will have a lot of young people working with established companies. Could be interesting to hear their view on how the future will look like, or what it would take for shipping to be able to withstand this threat from Amazon or other players.
Thank you, Pia. I really enjoyed this.
Likewise. It's been a pleasure. We could talk for hours.
Yes, we could. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Pia. This was such a good conversation, and I thoroughly enjoyed the time we spent together. I think I have to come back. I know that there is more to talk about when it comes to autonomous shipping. But thank you. At this point in the episode, I usually speak about things that are on my mind right now when it comes to podcasting. And lately I've been playing around with updating the look and feel of the shipping podcast. It's been going on for 3.5, almost 4 years, so I think it was time. I don't know if you have noticed that from now, I try to have a quote from the guest at the beginning, summing up what the episode is all about. So that is new. Something else that is new is that the other day someone gave me a compliment for the sound quality of the podcast being so much improved. Well, I do have a professional editor nowadays. Her name is Jen Eads, and she's working with me to further develop the experience that you have as a listener. In addition, I have done my first remote interview, an episode that you will hear in May. I don't think that the entire production is going to be autonomous, but there are so many technical details behind the scenes that you are not aware of that needs to work for me to interview a person who I am not sitting next to. I think part of my success has been to actually sit down with my guest in an environment that they feel comfortable in and just have a conversation. I'm not trying to replace the in-person interviews, but I will test some more remote interviews to see how that works with people who are a little bit more tech-savvy and can contribute in other areas to what we are listening to, the shipping podcast lovers. I hope you will enjoy that I am trying to develop the concept of it. I'm open to suggestions and feedback. You know that. So just send me an email to hello@shippingpodcast.com with whatever you want to tell me. So now I will leave you to digest on all the interesting things that Pia spoke about. But please write to me or write down the thoughts you have on autonomous shipping in the comments on the website or in social media. This is something on everyone's mind right now. And I think more people should listen to Pia Meling on the 107th episode of the Shipping Podcast, and you can help me spread that word. So I will leave you now. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.